So let me just summarise a few things about My-Le. So as Michael said, a spectacular migrant success story. Literally stepped off a refugee boat in Australia, I think in the 80s, with nothing. Started work in a sweatshop, a sewing clothing shop, self-educated herself all the way through medicine, and then ran a practice for, I think, 27 years without a complaint. I was 32 years without an APRA complaint. Paul Oosterhouse, 32 years without an APRA complaint, etc., etc. So a spectacular success, both as a new Australian and as a doctor. Her crime was that early on in the whole COVID madness, she prescribed ivermectin to a dying patient. Now, this was before the "you cannot prescribe this" edicts came out. So at the time, it was perfectly legal for her to prescribe ivermectin. She prescribed it to a dying patient who was failing approved therapy, and the patient survived, almost certainly because of her. It wasn't illegal what she did. APRA then, in my opinion, generated out of thin air a fictitious complaint using an anonymous and untraceable witness with an obviously made-up name, John Smith. When I worked in the military, every Special Forces guy who came in wounded was called John Smith. It was the standard pseudonym to hide their name. Same as in the American cop shows, John Doe is what they call the body. Jane Doe and John Doe. It's just a generic term for that. So they had a clearly fictitious complaint. She went before an APRA process, which is an inquisition. It's a star chamber. It's not set up with any of the legal checks and balances that I had access to when I went through the criminal trial. So she couldn't call the witness. They didn't know who the bloody witness was. So she couldn't get to cross-examine the person who was making the complaint against her. She couldn't meet her accuser. The fundamental rule of judicial fairness is you get to meet your accused. You get to question what they're saying. You get to respond to it. She didn't get any of that. She just got told, well, here's a fictitious complaint about you, and we're going to go with it. And they did. And they found her guilty of, I think, grossly substandard medical conduct. Not because she saved the life of a dying woman that the system was failing, but because she didn't follow the rules. She didn't follow orders was her crime. And yep, she's just been through the tribunal, and they've agreed with that. She was practicing at a grossly substandard level. She's deregistered for 5 years.
So there you go. That is my good friend of the channel, Dr. Bruce Pay, who you know as well, Dr. My-Le Trinh, suspended. The person that he was talking about is obviously you, and wanted to play that to give it a little bit of an overview, because Bruce encapsulated it quite well. Obviously talking after you appeared with him and other doctors on Cafe Locked Out with Michael Gray Griffiths, done a lot of work. He's given you a platform, and so have many others as well. So welcome to my little humble podcast, Faith, Culture, Politics in Australia, and for you to have the opportunity to, I guess, expand on all the things that Dr. Bruce Pay just explained as well in that little intro. So welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, Dr. Pay did a fantastic job. I think you can do a better job than me in describing what actually took place. I have to correct him on a couple of points, and that is, I only had the surgery for 10 years, so I managed and ran a practice, a sort of a mid-sized medical practice with about 6 to 8 doctors for about 10 years, and I practiced in the Hills District for about 22 years. But I've been a doctor for 27 years without a complaint. Yes. So my ordeal started when COVID started. But just to go back from how I came to Australia. So I was born in Cambodia. And just before the Khmer Rouge came into power, My mom sent, mom had many children, and I was one of 8. And I was I had a lot of fear as a kid, young kid, because there was a lot of bombing in Cambodia just before the Pol Pot came in. So there was an instance where I was just outside the house, and an American plane just swooped down, it was just about to drop the B-52 bomb. And I was only 4.5, and I remembered, it took me, like, I've forgotten what actually took place. It took me many years to actually remember what actually happened. But I remember looking up at the belly of the plane and saw B-52, and the plane was really, really low, and it was just about to drop that bomb. So I ran with my sister into a bomb shelter, which was just like a few meters away. And the earth shook, and, dirt fell all over us. And I was literally shaking, and took a long time for me to compose myself. And that incident actually caused me to have a lot of fear. And one of the reasons that my mom sent me to Vietnam to live with my aunt. So she sent many of her children, but she couldn't send all of them. And I was one that she picked because I had a lot of fear of bombing. So, and that fear, I lived with a lot of fear for throughout my life. So I came to Vietnam to live with my aunt for about 6 years. I went through primary school there, and I lived through communism in Vietnam for about 3 years. And so I've seen what tyranny looks like, what freedom was like, because I lived 3 years free in Vietnam, and then the next 3 years under communism. And so as a child, I experienced both, sort of, literally just a short period apart. And this is a stark contrast between what freedom looks like and what tyranny looks like. So my aunt, in the late 1970s, there were a lot of Vietnamese people escaped communism to other parts, by boat to other parts of Asia. So she decided to do the same. And so we have to escape the authority. We have to do it without being caught. So we had to pay for the skipper, the fishing boat, to take us out. And so there were a group of about 49 people altogether, and we have to board the ship, the boat, the fishing boat, in the middle of the night, and leave shore in the middle of the night. So so we did that, and the boat, we went towards Thailand. And basically the idea is that you have to leave without getting caught, and if you get caught, you're going to go to jail, and you have to pay the person who owns the boat lots of gold. So in those days, if you want to leave, each person has to pay anywhere from 10 to 20 not ounces, leong, of gold. So that's about 2.25 or 1.25 ounce of gold. So you have to pay. You have to have money in order to escape. And so we knew this. My aunt's family knew the guy who owns the boat, so we didn't have to pay that much for them. But we left Vietnam and we didn't get caught, and we ended up in Thailand within 5 days, and we were hoping to find a refugee camp. So we found a couple, but we were not allowed to disembark because the camps were full, so they wouldn't allow ship to disembark or fishing boat to disembark. So we had to then try to look for other campsites or other refugee camps. It took another 8 days for us to eventually find a camp in Malaysia that would receive us. So we lived on this Virgin Island. It was beautiful. We had a lot of beautiful beaches, and the Malaysian government had built longhouses to accommodate refugees from Vietnam. So we stayed there, and we were given food. The Red Cross provided food ration for us. So I was there for about 2 months, and Australian government then they abolished the white. It's the white whatever policy, I can't remember.
White Australia policy, yeah.
Yes, the white Australia policy, where they only receive people from European countries. So that was abolished by the Fraser government, I think, and they started accepting people from Asia. So we got accepted fairly quickly. So I was only living at the refugee camp for about 2 months. And so I arrived in Perth. I lived in Perth for about 2 years. And my aunt and her family decided to move to Sydney because to find work. And so we ended up in Sydney. So they had to find a way of making a living, and sewing was an easy way of or earning an income, because they couldn't speak English and they don't have any skills. So they started a sewing business, and they sew at home. So I had to assist. So I did a lot of sewing as a kid from the age of 14 and a half till I went to university. Even when I was in university, I still had to sew. So, that's what Michael from Cafe Lookout, he said I was working in a sweatshop. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it's out of necessity of the family. So I studied. I went to high school, couldn't speak a word of English, and I had to learn that and then deal with not the language issue, and then the content as well. So I had to do all that by myself, and I had a younger sister who I was kind of looking after. I'm sort of like a mother to her. So I took on a responsibility of an adult at a very young age. So when I was in high school, sort of getting to when I was in high school towards year 11, year 12, I decided to move school. And I made all that decision myself, doing research to find a school that would give me an opportunity to do well. And so I changed school many times, and I had to do that all by myself. So I did well in the HSC, and I got to dentistry, and I realized that I could I'm capable of learning and to excel in studies. So I did really well during my 2 years in dentistry, and that allowed me to transfer into medicine. So I got into medicine at the University of Sydney, and that was when they started the 6-year course. So previously it was a 5-year course. So I did that, and I became a doctor. And so, I mean, it's not everything that I've been through wasn't something that handed to me on a silver platter or anything like that. I had to do that all on my own. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional.
No, that's totally understandable, My-Le. You know, because clearly, you know, your early days when you were 4 and you had that trauma, you experienced that, and then, you know, having to escape then Vietnam as well, and, you know, two episodes like that. At any time, I guess your life could have been snuffed out during that period as well. You know, if any you could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time and captured and all these sorts of things. And through the grace of God, I guess you made it, you know, to Australia with your aunt, but you still did it very tough. You know, looking after younger siblings, working in the sewing shop, you know, at a young age as a teenager. You know, many teenagers nowadays have got the luxury of mobile phones and doing whatever they want, and, you know, you were working and in a sewing shop and that, and then you know, having the ability, I guess, to use, you know, your mind to be able to then research where you wanted to go and have a direction of where you wanted to go, and put yourself through dentistry and put yourself through medical, and I guess, and I understand this, where the emotion comes in, because I've myself and others have been following your journey of what's been happening under this period of time, and I myself have only experienced 6 years of waking up to what was happening, and, you know, lost my job and everything. Nothing compares to what you've been through, but the frustration that lays underneath the surface is clear and real. Having worked so hard for a medical license and never having a complaint, and then having regulators coming after you like this, it would be a really bitter pill to swallow, I imagine, and that's clearly why the emotion is there, and it's raw. So, you know, I really empathise with you, and my viewers and people on Cafe Looked at Another Way would really understand that. So I kind of want to get a bit of an idea. You talked about the communism thing, and you knew what tyranny looks like. When you first come to Australia and you were able to put yourself through, you did all the hard work to get through dentistry and medical and all that. Was Australia a different place then for you? And when do you think things changed? Do you see a specific time before COVID, or was it just COVID that you started seeing a change from what was, you know, Australia was a lucky country, she'll be right, mate, you know, everybody just, you know, got on, but clearly there's been a change, even for myself that's been in Australia, born here. Have you noticed that? At what point did you notice that?
Well, certainly, Australia has given me an opportunity that I would never be able to get it elsewhere. And, you know, I had a free education, even though I didn't go to a private school or anything, but I was able to find a school that I was able to learn and do well in, and be as competitive as other people who's educated in a private system. I got to go to university, the best university, you know, in the world. Sydney University is well known for its academic academia, and I had that opportunity. You know, I didn't have to pay for HECS or anything, not until towards the end, but I had a free university education, and that's hard to get elsewhere in other countries. So I built a business. You know, started a business with a friend. We bought over a medical center, and I managed that for a period of time. So I was I could build my career, provide for my family, and I did extremely well. And I was given all that opportunity, and I guess it's not. So I built up from nothing, and I was able to succeed. And the system, Australia's given me that opportunity. Where I find, I mean, I knew that I sort of started to feel that the big pharma was controlling what I was doing for maybe a little while. During my practice, towards the end of my practice, maybe for about 5 years before COVID started, I started to feel that I was just I was just writing scripts for patients, and I felt I wasn't really providing a really good service for people. And I I didn't sort of do a lot of research into other stuff about pharmaceutical products, but I realized as a doctor that I wasn't really provide a service that I wanted to provide, and I felt that I was simply writing scripts for people, and even that I was conscious of not doing a lot of that if there's other ways of treating the patient. And I have a tendency of giving a lot of time to my patient, and not one of those that walk in and walk out kind of thing. So I try to be as ethical and provide the best service for my patients. I over the years I realized when there were a few situations where there was drug recalls, drugs that were released for just 6 months or a couple of years, and it got recall or got withdrawn very quickly, and there were reports of very serious side effects, and that made me become very cautious of new medications that that gets approved, because obviously the approval process is not vigilant enough to have drugs and get withdrawn very quickly. So things like Vioxx and quite a few other medication during the time that I practiced that got recalled, and I was it made me become not so trusting of the system. And in fact, towards the end, I was just before COVID, I wanted to give up medicine altogether. So when it was time for me to renew my registration, I made a decision to not renew it. But then I was a bit ambivalent, and I was tossing, I couldn't decide which way to do. But eventually at one point I realized that God didn't want me to give up my license. And that was the reason why I couldn't do it. So I decided to renew my license. So when COVID came, well, just before COVID, sorry, your question was, how did I, about tyranny, and when did I appreciate that, that things have changed in Australia. I guess in everyday life, we can't see it, but certainly when COVID came, it was completely different. So I can say that I'm suspicious of the system because of my profession, but it wasn't evident until COVID came in. So for me, when they started to lock down the country and things like that, that's to me was exactly the tyranny that was what it was like living in Cambodia, living in Vietnam during communism. It's just a different narrative, but the effect was the same. Was completely the same. So I got woken up to this COVID issue maybe about 2 years before that, and that's because I was I did a brief. I had friends that challenged me about Donald Trump, so I decided to make a decision on my own and do some research. And it so happened that at the time when I was doing the research, that Trump was just about to campaign for the second election. So I got to know a lot about what was happening in America and the politics behind it. And so when COVID came, I was very, how do I say, I was very cautious. And when they decided to, when China decided to lock down Wuhan, that was, an alarm bell for me. I just thought, my goodness, what's happening in the world, So I started to follow a doctor in America. What's his name? I've just forgotten. So I followed him, and he was doing a YouTube every day, and I followed him. And I got to know stuff that's happened in America and what the government was doing, and the suppression of, hydroxychloroquine at the beginning, and how the U.S. government managed COVID, and the problems associated with that. So I got to know all that very early, and it was very frightening because I could see the lies and how do I say the decision that were made that was very detrimental to the health of the public, and it concerned me a great deal. So the things that occurred in Australia was much later. So, I could see all that happening in the US, and I could see all that's going to happen in Australia because I knew it's going to be the same thing. So
Yeah, it's very interesting because a lot of people that I've spoken to had the similar thing, that all the information that was going on through the elections and everything, and a lot of Australians were following what was happening in America with Trump and everything else, and like myself were woken up to do more research. And I remember I keep telling the story about listening to the very passionate speech by Dr. Pierre Corey in the Senate in America about why he's a frontline medical physician, and he was trying to save lives, and he was almost prevented to do that. And as a first point of contact, sending people home, it was unheard of. So this really rang alarm bells with me, and I really started doing my deep dive then as well. So it sounds like a very sort of similar story, but I guess you ended up in the thick of it, being a doctor in the front line, and really things going against, I guess, your inner intuition about, hang on a minute, I'm a doctor, I've picked up things over the years, and this just is very counterintuitive. Would that be right?
Yes. So I think for those, so I think that the only way you can be suspicious of, be awake and know what was going on was if you don't listen to the mainstream media and you do your own research. And some of us have that kind of mindset, and we did that. And yes, so I got to understand a lot about what was going on. So when as a physician, my objective was, okay, this is deadly. disease that's going around, and what can I do as a physician? What can I do? Because I'm a primary care physician, and I need to know what's available for patients, and for myself and my family too, not just patients, you know. So I did a lot of research, and I wanted to know what other physicians overseas were doing, and I knew that hydroxychloroquine worked. I knew the story of, you know, the French doctor, Dr. Dillier, in France, and I realized that well, at the beginning, there were a lot of evidence to show that hydroxychloroquine works. So, and to see that governments in Western nations were suppressing hydroxychloroquine was just unbelievable. I just couldn't believe why you would suppress a treatment that works. And when ivermectin, when there was evidence showing that ivermectin worked, I got really excited, because, you know, ivermectin is a much safer drug, and it's a lot easier to use than hydroxychloroquine. So when I was convinced that it works, and that I could do it without breaking the law, I decided that, you know, that's what I have to do, because that's what that's what my profession should do. Every doctor who, you know, they know that there's a treatment for a disease that's potentially lethal, that we are obligated to prescribe it, and I had no issue with that whatsoever. I mean, but the only thing I had was that COVID, at the time, they don't, at the beginning, the health policy is that if you have COVID, you have to stay home. You're not to go anywhere. You're not to seek any medical treatment. You got to stay home, lock yourself indoor. You can't contact anyone, and you got to wait till you get better, or if you get worse, you call an ambulance and go to the hospital. And that kind of health policy is just appalling. And I just don't understand why it's even in place, because if you're dealing with a viral illness, there's many ways of treating a viral illness, and certainly locking yourself indoor wasn't going to be a treatment for the benefit of the patient. Anyhow, so I decided to, I mean, you know, as a Christian, I want to do what is right. And so I prayed to God and asked God to use me, that I'm willing to to do what is right for the people. And it makes no sense for me to not willing to do that if I knew that there's a treatment available. So, you know, for those people who didn't know that there's a treatment, I mean, that's different. But once I found out that there's a treatment, well, there's many treatments available, but, you know, there's a very, very good treatment available, I couldn't live with myself, that I would somehow withhold treatment, because the government wanted me to do so. And also prescribing ivermectin off-label wasn't illegal. So there wasn't anything illegal in what I was doing. And so I prepared to be in that position. And I knew it was risky, but I said to myself, as long as I'm not breaking any law, I have no issue with that. So I prayed for many, many weeks. And I said to God, you know, I don't care what's going to happen to me. You know, if you can just put me out there and use me, whatever, and I'm willing to be used. And it was really funny because I saw a speech made by Craig Kelly in Parliament about ivermectin. And I got so excited because for the first time we have someone in Parliament that speaks about a treatment. So I actually contacted Craig. Anyhow, I somehow ended up in COVID Medical Network, where there were a lot of people in the health profession who was all awake and discussing about the pandemic and COVID, etc. So I was part of that group for a short period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to go to that because I think it was in 20. So I've got a quick clipping here. So this was from the Epoch Times, who's kind of a bit more of a fairer reporting, and they did a bit of an exclusive there. Suspended doctor reveals how regulators punished her for prescribing ivermectin. Because I guess we'll go on to, I guess if you're ready to go into kind of a bit more about what's happened to you since that period of prescribing COVID. But before I do that, My-Le, I just wonder, because I'm pretty sure you know this person, I just wanted to play this quickly as well.
Thing that really upset most of my colleagues was the fact that there were drugs that had a lot of evidence in support, a lot of evidence for hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. And not only were they dissuaded from using it, but they were penalised. There are still doctors 5 years ago that APRA, the organisation that we have getting our registration, APRA are still persecuting for prescribing ivermectin, which is a harmless, cheap drug that is incredibly effective at saving lives and reducing the incidence and intensity of COVID.
So that's Professor Robert Clancy, and he was the one that was quoted also by Craig Kelly on the Today Show on Channel 9, and Ali Langdon come hard after him. So look, there was a lot of people that have been speaking into this space. And, you know, look, I think Professor Clancy rightly said, you are one of those people that's still being persecuted. So I wonder if you can, you know, articulate, walking the audience through how you got to that stage of APRA, our regulator, coming after you. That's drawn out now for a couple of years now.
Yes. So so the case that started, so I received 2 complaints against me all of a sudden in October of 2021. And these 2 complaints were made on the same day. The first complaint was made by an intern in the toxicology department of Westmead. And that was concerning a patient that I have treated, and she was gravely ill after having been admitted to hospital with a possible, you know, other medical condition, but she was found to have COVID. But she wasn't received any treatment in hospital, but she was put in an isolated room, but then also were forced to wear a mask. So she decided to discharge herself against medical advice and went home. She deteriorated over several days, and one of my colleagues from another state asked whether I would take care of her. I was told that she's not very sick, and you know, whether you could do anything to help this lady. When she first reached out to me, well, her family reached out to me, she was quite unwell. And my advice to her was to go to the hospital because you're too unwell to be treated at home. But they obviously she's discharged herself against medical advice, and that's already a decision they made. But the families also, I feel that they're quite aware of what was happening in our hospital system, and they're quite aware of the availability of other treatment like ivermectin. So they sourced their own ivermectin before I even got involved. So I tried to convince her to go to the hospital, but they refused. So I felt obligated to do whatever I can to assist in the meantime, because if you don't treat a viral illness early, all they do is deteriorate. And if there's anything that I could give her, immediately, that's going to help in the long run. Whether she decided to stay home or to go to hospital, that was going to help. So I gave her ivermectin, doxycycline, and zinc, which is a protocol one of the professor in Australia was recommending, and various other things to try and get her better. So I treated her. I treated her in sort of a home setting, but this is because the whole health edict at the time was to stay home, and you can't go anywhere. Patient that's COVID positive could not go to a doctor to get advice. That the only option they have was to go to the hospital. So for a patient who refused to go to the hospital, what do you do? And what do you do as a doctor if you're not allowed to treat someone, but then at the same time somebody has come to you and asked for help? Well, what do you do? I was in a very difficult situation. So I do what I could do, the best that I could do in the circumstances that I was in, and that was to give her medication that could get her over the ordeal. And I have to do everything possible.
Just to be clear there, My-Le, so the script, and that there was nothing illegal at the time with the script for you to be able to write that. I'm aware that it goes all the way back that doctors do home visits. In the old days they did home visits. So nothing, from what I understand, nothing you did was actually against what regulators could ping you for, really. Like home visits to me are a standard thing, and prescribing something as a doctor for what you felt was the right thing to give. There was nothing untoward about that on its own either. Is that right?
Well, yes, that's correct. That I didn't do anything wrong in terms of prescribing for her. But the issue, I guess, is the fact that she did it remotely. So I wasn't allowed to see her because she's in, there's a health policy where she can't leave the house, and I can't really visit her because there's no contact. Like, you're not allowed, the public or even the doctor cannot allow to go and see a patient because the policy at the time was that you can't go to see your doctor. You actually have to stay home. And the only way that, because the narrative at the time was that this is a deadly disease, it's highly contagious. They were tracing contact. They were trying to limit the number of cases. You're not allowed to. So for someone who's infected, they're not allowed to come into contact with anyone. So that's the idea. Then that's the period that I was treating these patients. So I couldn't go out to see her. She can't come out to see me. So the only way that we could do that is by telephone. So it was a telehealth consult. And I prescribed medication to her. And, the family, her distant family, then went and picked up the medication and sent it to her, because the health policy at the time is that you can't come to contact with anyone who's infected, and the people who's infected cannot leave their house. That there was police, because I was told by the family that the police would check on them every day to make sure that they remained in their home. And at one stage they told me that they have to come outside the house, and the police would drive past their street and they would count and make sure that the right number of people is in that house, that no one have left the house, illegally. And the only way that you can leave your house is that when you have a PCR negative test.
Yep.
And that was the policy at the time. So I couldn't do a home visit on this patient. But I did a lot of research. I knew how to treat. I knew how to treat cytokine storm. I did a lot of research and understood the disease. I learned a lot of things from Dr. Pierre Corey. I followed FLCCC for quite a while, and I've educated myself when SARS-CoV-1 was here in 2003. When SARS was SARS-CoV-1 was around, and how people who were really, really unwell with SARS-CoV-1 was recovered when they were treated with their cytokine storm with steroids and things like that. So it's not, it wasn't a random guess or anything. I've been a doctor for almost 3 decades, and I've worked in remote area. So I served in Cambodia for more than a decade, working in rural area where there's no modern facilities available. I treated very, very sick people under that sort of environment. So my skill set's not the same as people who's practicing in suburban Australia, in metropolitan Australia. So I'm faced with a situation where someone who didn't want to go to the hospital. So I just did what I could do, and it wasn't that I came up with a treatment for no proper basis. There's scientific. Everything that I did was scientifically correct, medically correct, and it's that the treatment's been used not by me but by other doctors in other areas of medicine for many, many, many years. The protocol that I use is what they call post-steroid. So you give someone who's in a situation called cytokine storm, where their lungs are inflamed with a lot of inflammatory sort of reaction as a result of the infection, and so you got to give them a high dose of an anti-inflammatory medication to settle down the inflammation, because your lungs is a very important organ. If you can't get oxygen into your blood, you're going to die. So it's a critical moment, and if you treat too late, you can't. It's hard to reverse the inflammation. So, and the earlier you treat it, the better it is. And it's a very critical moment between, the difference between hours of delaying treatment could make a huge difference in the outcome. And the thing is that if she continues to stay at home for a period until she got really critical, she could potentially die. And so, it was a very difficult situation for me. It didn't come lightly. I thought really hard about it before I made the decision to progress to starting her on post-steroid. So the criticism of me using this protocol is ludicrous, because the expert witness who criticized me for using this treatment, he himself used this treatment as well. So it's the thing is, it's if the system is against you, it doesn't matter what you do. They can come up with anything to argue against you. But anyhow, that's how I got into trouble. And then on the same day, John Smith, a second complaint from someone by the name of John Smith was made on the same day. And the allegation against me was that John Smith has a friend, and he presented a prescription of this friend, and that his friend doesn't have worms, and yet I prescribe ivermectin for him, and that he's alleged that I'm an anti-vaxxer. He called my medical center, and it was confirmed that I'm an anti-vaxxer, and that I promote this COVID-19 alternate treatment for COVID-19 on an online forum, and that he knew exactly how many other ivermectin scripts I had prescribed. And so the allegation itself, it's really, I mean, if the regulator really want to look into the whether that's those allegations were truthful, they could actually verify that easily by just calling the medical center and ask whether I did any of those things, and it would be no. I mean, the allegation that I promote such thing online, it's false. I never did. And the fact that well, the thing is, the prescription that was used by John Smith, and he alleged that that's from his friend, that prescription, the name of the patient and the address was redacted, but John Smith forgot to redact the Medicare number. And that allowed me to identify who that script belonged to. And that happened to be a prescription belonged to a family member. And I was the one that took the prescription to the chemist near my practice to have it filled on the same day that I had prescribed it. So when I received the complaint, I went to the pharmacist to look for my script. Now, what happened was that when I went to have that filled, the chemist had ran out of ivermectin. So I was advised to leave the script, and they said to me that I expect to have more supplies the following week, and they would call me. But unfortunately, what happened is that between the time that was prescribed and then just about 3 weeks later, ivermectin was banned. Severely restricted, and so GPs were not allowed to prescribe, and certainly not prescribe for COVID anyway. So I had forgotten all about it. So I didn't think anything of it, and I thought that the prescription was, it was just no use, because I couldn't get supplies of ivermectin anyway. So I'd never gone back to get my script back. So when I got the complaint, I went looking for it, and I went to the chemist and asked where the prescription was. So I was told by the pharmacist, the assistant at the chemist, that my prescription of ivermectin had been handed over to an APRA agent. I went again the second week, and I was told the same thing. So I started to become very suspicious, because who's John Smith then? If the prescription was handed over to an APRA agent, how did John Smith get hold of a prescription that was in the hand of an APRA agent? I wrote to APRA and asked APRA whether they had my prescription or my family member's prescription, and they said they didn't have any. They didn't have that wasn't in their possession. So who's John Smith then? So John Smith did not provide his address. He had a landline number which cannot be reached. He had an email address that bounces back. And the interesting thing is that when John Smith generated a complaint against me via the APRA portal, the only way that the complaint could go through was if his email address works. So yes, his email address worked at the time because the system has to generate a report, and it actually has to go back to the complainant. So John Smith did make a complaint against me using that email address, and he did go back. He did receive an email back from APRA. So I wrote to the Healthcare Complaints Commission, the commissioner, asking whether the identity of John Smith could be revealed to me. And I asked APRA the same thing, and no one responded to me. Well, APRA responded to me saying that they're not involved in the complaint system. And that's true in the sense that APRA doesn't directly involved in the complaint handling in New South Wales. The Medical Council is, but the metadata is there. They knew who John Smith is. They could do their own assessment and verification whether that's a valid complaint or not, and who's John Smith, and how did John Smith get hold of a prescription that's validly prescribed and belong to the patient and should not have been handed over to them, and they shouldn't have received it. And even if they did, they should not have allowed it to be accessed by someone else and to be used against me. So there's really a lot of issue with the John Smith complaint. I made a note. I made a complaint on behalf of the family member to the Healthcare Complaints Commission regarding the missing prescription at the chemist. I made the complaint against the chemist who handed out that prescription to a so-called APRA agent, because they have breached the patient confidentiality by handing that valid prescription over to the regulator, because they're not allowed to do that. The only way that APRA, the only way that the health regulator could assess could get their hands on that prescription was if they had a warrant to do so, and they didn't. So there's certainly someone's in breach of the law, whether it's a chemist or whether it's the health regulator. Well, someone should investigate that issue. And I put that forward to the Healthcare Complaints Commission, the commissioner herself. I wrote multiple letters. I wrote to to APRA as well, but no one was willing to do anything. And the irony is that the family member whose prescription was stolen became the complainant in my complaint. They turned that into a complaint against me.
Wow. So the intern, how did they? Going back to the intern, so how did they end up reporting you for treating the patient at home? How did that come about?
So the patient developed some side effects from the medication I prescribed, and she ended up at Westmead. The thing is that I discharged her from my care 5 days before that, and she was COVID-free. I said, go back to your GP, see your doctor, assess, and you need to get yourself checked out. I don't know what they did in the between, but what I know is that they did go and see a doctor, and I don't know what was advised, but they ended up at Westmead Hospital. They were she was under the care of a neurology team, and Westmead Toxicology was the director, or the associate professor Narangunja was requested to give an opinion about her condition, and simply because she had been prescribed ivermectin. So the toxicology department, or the toxicology team, the Westmead toxicology team, was not the team that treated the patient. So the intern of the toxicology unit made a complaint against me. Now, I didn't know that that she had. I didn't know anything about the circumstances as to why they made a report against me. When at the time when I received that complaint, I was very concerned about the patient. So I decided to ring up the doctor who made that complaint, and that was when I found out that she was an intern. And I asked her the reason as to why she made a complaint against me, and her response was, I don't know why I made a complaint against me, against you. So that was her response. I said, what do you mean you don't know why you made a complaint against me? That's just absurd. So she said that she was just following orders from her superior, and her superior was the associate professor Narangunja, who's the director of the toxicology department at Westmead. So I left messages for him to call me back, and I wasn't, it was just to find out why he made a complaint against me. That's all. As a physician, I like to know what I did wrong, because I couldn't understand why they made a complaint against me. So I reached out 3 times, at least 3 times, and I also called the hospital and asked the hospital to page the professor so that I could speak to him, but I couldn't reach him. So I decided then find out who he is. So I just put his name down on the internet, on Google search, and the story of a Western Sydney man suffered an ivermectin overdose at Westmead Hospital came up, and I found lots and lots of those articles about the professor and this case of an ivermectin overdose. So there's he's gone to at the time, that was early September 2021, he went to the radio station, I think it was 2WS or something in Melbourne, and he went on Channel 7 to talk about the risk associated with ivermectin, and how ivermectin was not a cure for COVID-19, and that there was risk of people taking, procuring ivermectin online and taking inappropriate doses, etc. Now, I really don't know whether that's true or not. What I know is that ivermectin is a very safe medication, that it's very hard to overdose on ivermectin. But I don't know how much ivermectin this patient had taken. I mean, I can't speak about this specific case without any evidence. But what I did was that in 2023, 23, I think, yeah, February 23, I decided to do a freedom of information to try to obtain how many cases of ivermectin overdose was presented to Westmead Hospital. My application was rejected. But the reason for rejection was that there's not that many cases presented during the period that I requested. So I think I requested the period between July 2021 to just before ivermectin was banned by the TGA. And so within that period, they said there's so few cases that if they allow me to see the information that I could identify the patient. So basically there was hardly any ivermectin overdose cases presented to Westmead Hospital. The media alleged that people were taking ivermectin, and there were many cases. They were inundated with many cases presented to hospital, which was completely untrue. So ivermectin, to me, the story of people using it inappropriately, procuring online, and using a treatment that was not effective, and putting their lives at risk and putting pressure on the system that's already stretched because of COVID. They had to ban ivermectin. So when we say ban, I mean, it was still able to, doctors were still able to prescribe it, but it has to be, you have to be a specialist and only for certain conditions and not specifically for COVID. And it was a lie. I mean, to me anyway, I just think that the situation was that our health system was not strained by people using ivermectin at all. We were not, the media was complicit in reporting falsely reporting the situation. So these two complaints against me resulted in the medical council deciding to take me to an emergency suspension hearing. So I have to turn up to a hearing before I even got to respond to the two complaints. And I was interrogated all day. It went all day, where they wanted to know everything that I did, and how I treated the patient, etc., and who else I prescribed ivermectin for, etc. And by the end of that day, I was pronounced a danger to public health, and I was suspended immediately. And then, I mean, the thing is that what I know now, I mean, I've never faced anything like this before. So I guess I did a lot of things that in hindsight, I should have done better. But the important thing is that I didn't need to answer anything outside of the two complaints I received. And this is where I have not had proper legal advice, even though I had legal representation. And I think that allowed them to sort of extend, broaden the investigation and broaden the accusation against me. But their power lies in the fact that a complaint has to be raised against a doctor before they could investigate. So that sort of put me in a very sort of an unusual situation where I have revealed information and they didn't have a complaint against me. So, but the thing is that, to have a complaint, and to have complaints for the regulator to investigate a complaint against me, you have to verify those complaints. You have to assess those complaints, whether they were valid, whether allegations against me were valid and proper before they start investigating. And I think that's where I don't believe that they've done a proper assessment against me, and that's concerning both complaints, both John Smith and the Westmead complaints, because as it turned out, I found out later that the patient never made a complaint against me, and that the Westmead complaint itself did not have patient consent. So the patient did not consent to the Department of Toxicology, the Westmead Toxicology Department, making a complaint about me. So you have a situation where they already investigated me and already they already subjected me to a Section 150 emergency hearing, and the two complaints before them were potentially not properly assessed, not valid. So that was the situation, that's the circumstances I was in, and I guess it was kind of a very unusual situation, because technically, in my opinion, they should not have brought me before the Section 150 hearing to suspend me, because there was no urgent matter to deal with. See, that power should only be used when there's an urgent situation where their lives, where the physician, the health practitioner, put the public at risk, and there was someone's lives were at risk as a result of me, where they have to act urgently, and that certainly was not the situation in my case. So I don't believe that they had that power initially to even take me to the Section 150 hearing.
So just to be clear, then, that was the ban on ivermectin came after you did that. So it's not as if they could even get you on prescribing something that was technically banned by the TGA. This all occurred before the banning. You were saying something like 3 weeks before is when they've, the script, it wasn't there anymore as well with the John Smith complaint. And what you're saying is that the patient you treated isn't the one that actually made the complaint, or they weren't aware of the investigation themselves, or didn't get consent to that investigation or that complaint going ahead. So it sounds like that, everyone, and that script was actually for family member, as you found out through the Medicare number. So the whole lot of it just seems like it was fabricated from within internally. It appears as if internally that the whole lot was fabricated to make you a martyr in the ivermectin kind of scenario.
Correct. That's what I believe from day one. And it didn't matter what I tell them, that that script was stolen from the chemist and all that. It was pointless. No one wants to hear it, or the regulator didn't want to hear it. And they were the one that had the power to deal with my complaint. And that was raised from day one. It wasn't like I didn't tell them until later on, that was contemporaneously raised the whole time. And my lawyer at the time was raising this issue as well. But no one take any notice of those facts at all. And so I wasn't, so to me, the health regulator didn't do their job properly. It felt like the system wants to take me out and I was going to do everything possible to do so. That's how it felt.
So technically then now with this ruling that's just come out not long ago, is they're saying that you, in essence, they're saying that you're a threat to the public, or that you acted, there was a terminology for it. What was the terminology for it? But what was the actual reasoning in the end? So
there's two issues that there's two charges. One is that I'm found guilty of unsatisfactory professional conduct. So that means that I'm practicing really badly. The second one is professional misconduct. The professional misconduct comes from the allegation that I failed to provide the documentation that they were seeking during the investigation against me. So I have admitted to prescribing ivermectin, to other patients, and the health regulator wanted the medical files of those patients. Now, the medical files fortunately happen to be in paper form and not in electronic forms. So the electronic form they could access through the medical center, but the paper form they couldn't. And that's because of COVID, and I had to practice. I happened to consult during while I wasn't at the medical center. So they wanted to get hold of those files, but they didn't have a complaint against me. These people didn't make a complaint against me. No one had made complaints about those patients. And I was advised by 2 independent law firms and 2 independent lawyers to not produce those documents because they didn't have a legal basis for me to do so. And subsequently, those people wanted their files back because nobody wanted their files or their names to go to the government. And so I couldn't do what they wanted me to do, but legally I wasn't able to do it anyway because I was told not to do it by 2 independent lawyers because there's no legal basis for it. So I didn't comply with that order, and so I was found to be guilty of professional misconduct.
For not providing something that you were told that you shouldn't provide, and the patients said that, well, we want our files back, so no, you can't have them. So you technically couldn't provide them, and you've been charged for that. You've been pretty much, that's part of the whole process. And the other one relates back to the John Smith complaint and the intern complaint, and that's what you were found of that gross misconduct as well for that.
Yes. So the thing is that I couldn't be found guilty in either of those, in any of things at all after 9 days of the hearing at the tribunal. The expert witness for the Healthcare Complaints Commission admitted that my treatment for that patient saved her life, and then the Healthcare Complaints Commission had to drop 2 charges against me, and that was an improper conduct and unethical conduct. They have to drop those 2 charges against me because their own expert witness admitted that I saved the patient's life. Now, I have Professor Clancy, who's the immunologist the top immunologist in Australia admitted that my treatment and the protocol I used for treating that patient was not an issue. And he even said that, he would love me to be his GP. So, I mean, what more? I mean, I could not, the tribunal could not possibly find me guilty or practicing significantly below standard with the evidence and the expert witness before them. And I had Dr. Pierre Corey from the US supporting my case. And I have two other GPs. I mean, one didn't give evidence because he couldn't. But I have another experienced GP who had no issue with the protocol that I used and the steroid dosage that I use on this patient. And the professional misconduct concerning those medical files. The law say that if I have a reasonable basis for not complying, that there was not an issue. So I could not have been found guilty of anything whatsoever in my eyes after the hearing, really. So.
And as we've found out, one of the biggest issues is the process, is the punishment. It's like, now that you're suspended, you've been suspended for quite some time, obviously, and you're now considering, and has that been formalised, considering a Supreme Court challenge against what they've handed down? Is that currently where your thinking's at?
Yes. So I could file an appeal of some sort to the Supreme Court on a legal on the points of law. So obviously, I do not want to argue on the merits of the case, because you can never win arguing in the merits of the case. But I feel that my case, there's many unlawful process that have been subjected to from the very beginning, from the two original complaints all the way through, and there's no procedural fairness at all in my eyes throughout the hearing. And I have a very good basis to argue those points in the Supreme Court. I mean, if I'm so guilty, that doesn't matter what I've done wrong. I'm entitled to a fair and proper hearing. This is Australia. This is not North Korea. This is not China. This is Australia, and everyone who's been alleged wrongdoing should have a proper and a fair hearing. And I didn't have any of that. And and I feel that I should fight on.
Yeah, 100%. Well, this is the problem with commissions and other things. They've built all these little systems around these types of organisations that can ultimately punish you without having a jury of your peers deliberating all the information. They can kind of just make that decision, like you said, emergency hearing, and you've been suspended without a proper due investigation on all those, on the complaints. Does the mean then, if you go to the Supreme Court, that they can subpoena all the information and everything that they've bought to try and that they used to obviously punish you and hang you out to dry? Can all that be then seen in the light of day by I guess a jury and stuff? Is that what could happen?
No. So the appeal would be on a point of law it's not so much a subpoena, but they will examine anything that I raise that I feel that it's not that legally it's incorrect. So if the process, so in dealing with the complaints, if anything that I feel that wasn't complying with the legislation, with the way the Healthcare Complaints Commission and the Medical Council handling of the complaint and process, so any illegality of the process, I could raise that, and any evidence of procedural fairness or bias or whatever. If there's evidence of any of that, then the Supreme Court could look into that. So just a legal, it's got to be arguments on the points of law, not so much the actual merits of my case.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to have a bit more of a battle ahead of you then. What are you doing for yourself now with all this? Is obviously a lot of, I mean, this is a lot of pressure on you personally as well. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got, the news, the media, and everybody else coming after you. I mean, look, this was a recent report from news.com, they're talking about, and the wording as usual we've been used to, is Sydney GP has declared war and shared unsubstantiated conspiracy theories about a witch hunt. And, we've just got so used to this kind of media narrative and reporting. How are you keeping yourself, above water, and what are you, have you got other work that you can do? What is it that you're doing? Because I did have someone email me, a few people email me saying, look, when I shared your discussion on Cafe Lockdown, so look, how can we help My-Le? Like, what are the sort of things that you're doing, and how can other people help you with this through this journey?
Thank you for asking. This proceeding before the tribunal is covered by my insurance company, by my medical indemnity, but my medical indemnity wouldn't cover me, wouldn't pay for my legal cost. They insisted that I have to use their lawyers, and I did at the beginning. I used their lawyers, and that was in around June, July of 2024. And I worked with them for the entire month. But they couldn't produce anything. I was going to turn up to court with no expert witness, no evidence, not even an affidavit after 1 month of working with them. So I had nothing to defend myself before the hearing. So I had to dismiss them. And fortunately, I went to a lawyer that previously represented me, and she filed an adjournment, and that was successful. And as a result of that, I was able to then put forward a proper defense hearing in late 2024. So I didn't need to pay for my legal costs, but I had no choice. So as a result of that, I'm stretched for money, and I have to continue to fight on. So I need the public to support me. I haven't put up a GoFundMe or anything like that, but I will have to soon, because I'm going to have to pay legal fees to fight in the Supreme Court. So hopefully in the next week or so, I would put that up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's pretty humbling too. And I guess the thing is that once you do that, there's a lot of people following your case that will gladly jump on board and share that information out there. I mean, and this is what I wanted to give you that opportunity, obviously, to talk about your whole journey and everything. And you've got Michael Gray Griffith and Cafe Lockdown. I know that Hoodie and Lardo on Club Grubbery, I believe, as well, have spoken to you. I believe they'll be putting the call out to assist where people can. And if people have been asking sort of how can we help My-Le, so there's a way. And because the thing I think that what people have to realise, that Australians have to realise, is that, and the people in our camp that have been following this very closely, is that you're not just doing this for you, you're doing this for everybody and many other people that need to see accountability and transparency. And I on my blog page, I've written several articles unpacking the lack of transparency and accountability from our government through this whole COVID period, and including organisations like APRA and the media and everything, put it all that together, and so you're fighting this for a lot of people. So I'm hoping that you do get a lot of support in regards to that, to help you fund that next journey from there. And obviously I'll be encouraging as many Australians as possible, and I'll be doing the same, is to pray for you as well, My-Le, because you've indicated that you are a Christian, believe in God. So I think prayer is going to be a real big one. And how are you keeping yourself well? How are you doing that?
I'm doing well. I exercise regularly and I eat well, and so I don't have any issue with my with dealing it with I don't have a big psychological emotional issue with what's happening. I think at the beginning it was very stressful, but after going through the hearing at the tribunal, I was very relieved when their expert witness admitted that I saved the patient's life. So to me, I've been vindicated, and the fact that I've got world-class doctors standing up with me and supporting me, giving evidence to support my case, and that speaks volume. And I think it doesn't really matter that the system, it does matter, but the fact that the judgment is against me, it speaks volume about our judicial system. It's not so much about the fact that I'm guilty, because to me, if these doctors put their names and their reputation to stand stand with me, stand by me, how could I possibly be guilty? It wasn't easy to have Dr. Pierre Corey give evidence, testify to support my case, and Professor Clancy. Certainly the tribunal made it hard for my expert witness to give evidence. Dr. Fitch had to fly from Victoria to Sydney twice to give evidence, and Professor Clancy had to turn up 3 times to give evidence. So that sort of made it hard, but I felt really happy that I was able to put a proper defense for my case, and that I had good support from the medical profession and also from the public. I had lots of people turning up to the hearing, and there's lots of people not just inside the hearing room, but also sitting. They were sitting outside, even though they couldn't hear anything. They waited there, and they were there to support me, and that gave me a lot of peace and a lot of joy, and a lot of strength and courage to fight on. So you're right that I am fighting for not just myself, but really the system that we have in controlling the doctors and in suppressing dissent. It's overwhelming, and that system is putting it's affecting the health of every Australian, because if your doctors cannot speak the truth, then what you're getting is not necessarily the best treatment available for you. Because Yeah. So I felt responsible to, well, I felt this an obligation for me to fight, because of the complaints. There's illegality of some of the things that are occurring in my case, and I wanted the system to change. You know, the medical license is important to me, but it's not that important. I don't need to practice in order to survive. But it's important that we have a system that is transparent, that we have a regulatory system that can't target specific doctors because they want to take them out. It's got to have good. I mean, you can't just suspend and cancel a doctor's license without any medical basis for it. And I felt that that's what happened to me. And if that happened to me, it could happen to anyone. So I'm hoping that in fighting on that, the public will come to realize how corrupt the system is.
Yeah, yep, and I think more people are realising it. It's just got to get mainstream as the biggest problem, because I guess the media is still fighting heavily against people, and they using labels, conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxer and all these sorts of things that they keep throwing out there. So, but I see that you're very active on social media. So if people aren't already following you, jump on board to X and Facebook and follow Dr My-Le Trinh, suspended, and because I see that you're posting quite regularly around your case and around the situation. You're continue to call them out for their misbehaviour. So I encourage people to follow along so they can share it as well and share your story. As I said, I've got other platforms bigger than mine that you've appeared on, and share those interviews. For those that you feel this has resonated with you, I encourage you to share My-Le's story as well along there. So My-Le, you've been very generous with your time. I know that you're having lots of discussions, and I really do appreciate it. And wondering if you had anything else quickly, just a word of encouragement to Australians that are watching. Would you have anything?
Yes. So very briefly, I'm a very private person, so it was really hard for me to, post stuff on social media and talk about myself and my life. But one thing that I felt that made me do this is because I feel that because we have allowed people that governing us, we have allowed the system and the government and to do what they want to us without accountability. And I think that I felt guilty of that. And so standing up to me is holding those people to account. And I think if many of us do that, then the system could not be so corrupt. And it takes every one of us to do that. And I'm just hoping that what I do would encourage people to do the same.
Yeah, no, good on you, My-Le, and well done for everything that you're doing for a lot of people. Where I think many of us are unwilling participants in this, but feel that we're just compelled to do the best that we can to call out any sort of injustice and hold people to account. So well done, you're doing your part. So thank you again, and I'm just gonna, if you're okay with that, just quick prayer if I can for you, and then we'll call it quits. So thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it, My-Le.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to have this discussion with My-Le, Lord, and thank you for her boldness to continue to do what she's been doing, even though it goes against her grain, as she indicated. And Lord, I just continue, I pray, Lord, that you continue to give her courage, strength, wisdom, discernment, to continue to fight this battle. There's so many battles that can be fought, and I thank you, Lord, that My-Le is in that fight there with us, and I pray that you continue to put your arm around her and build her up, Lord. And in regards to her next challenge in regards to the Supreme Court, I may that you put it in people's hearts, if they see value and listen to My-Le's story, that they may feel it in their heart to contribute generously to help her and support her in that case for the Supreme Court challenge, Lord. And really just appreciate the time that you have given to My-Le and me to discuss this, to bring this out to a wider audience. So thank you, Lord, and I continue to thank you for everything that you provide us in this country, and building people up and bringing us together, Lord. And I'll leave us in your care, and I offer this up in the name of your glorious Son, Jesus Christ, Lord. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, My-Le. All the best. God bless you, and hope to talk to you again soon. I'll definitely be following you very, very closely.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.